Today marks 42 years to the date since the Black People's Day of Action in London. On this rainy day in March 1981, approximately 20,000 people marched from 439 New Cross Road, the site of the New Cross massacre, all the way to Blackfriars Bridge and ultimately to Hyde Park, gathering strength in numbers along the way. In London and across the country, social tensions were reaching a boiling point as racist violence towards the Black and Asian communities continued to go unchecked. And with police violence against the youth being horrendously rife, an operation known by the Met as PNH, Police N-Word Hunt, in May 1977 saw 60 young Black people in Lewisham have their homes raided, with 21 of them charged with conspiracy to steal. They became known as the Lewisham 21, and their community was determined to fight for them, establishing the Lewisham 21 Defence Committee. Tensions in this area were also exacerbated by the growing popularity of the National Front, who, in the Deptford ward of the borough, that same year, had achieved the largest share of the vote than both the Labour and the Conservative parties. Feeling emboldened by this, as well as encouraged by the blatant sympathies of local police, the National Front attempted to march through the largely Afro-Caribbean borough of Lewisham on the 13th of August 1977. But from as soon as they left New Cross, leader John Tyndall, pictured here, and his National Front were met by a valiant army of anti-racist, anti-fascist and socialist groups and campaigners, as well as a lot of ordinary people who were just sick and tired of their racist and divisive rhetoric that was polluting British society. Things went down, and it's fair to say that they went home in a heap. But after the epic Battle of Lewisham, National Front activity in the area wouldn't simply disappear. In December that same year, a popular youth club for the African Caribbean community known as the Moonshot was burnt down in an arson attack. In what seemed to be a retaliation after their failed march through the borough, a series of arson attacks terrorized the community over the coming years. And just days before the Moonshot Youth Club was set to reopen, in the early hours of Sunday, January 18th, 1981, a fire broke out at a house party in New Cross, the 16th birthday of popular young lady Yvonne Ruddock. Yvonne herself and 13 other young people at the party perished in this attack, which severely injured many more. The police and press were quick to act as though it was not racially motivated. Press even echoed their narrative that it was started internally by a fight. And to this day, nobody has ever been charged for this horrendous arson attack on this young girl's home and on the wider Black community. Another tragic fire that took place in Dublin, Ireland, just a few weeks later, was mourned heavily by the entire nation, receiving official statements of condolences from the Queen and the Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, directly to the affected families. But the families of the New Cross community affected by the massacre would receive no such acknowledgement. The New Cross Massacre Action Committee, chaired by legendary activists John Leroy and Darcus Howe, was set up on January 20th, within 2 days of the incident, and began to organise for a march on Parliament. They would make sure to impose strict rules on this march to maximise its effectiveness. There was a strict code of conduct for their stewards, which urged them to avoid engaging with the police, focus on building momentum, and ensure that all ethnic groups were allowed and invited to participate. And the New Cross Massacre Action Committee were not alone in this. Actually, they were joined by groups from up and down the entire country, from Bradford to Manchester, and even as far as France, that had all been suffering similar racial violence in their own communities. On the 2nd of March, they began in Fordham Park in New Cross, and they marched all the way to Hyde Park in Westminster, right up to the gates of Buckingham Palace. As you can see here, they held a range of powerful placards saying, "Equal rights and justice for all," "No black scapegoat for the fire," and the most popular of all, 13 dead and nothing said. They also made sure to march down Fleet Street, the home of the British press, to make sure their voices would be centered in this narrative. And also just to give them a piece of their mind. You see, many newspapers had long been ridden with indifference and hostility towards the black community, and they had even maintained the bogus police narrative that the arson attack was probably started internally. One particular paper, The Sun, went on to prove their point exactly. This article, titled "Black Day at Blackfriars," sympathized outwardly with the police, proudly referencing the peaceful and coordinated protest as a riot. But on this day, it seemed their racial innuendos went a bit too far, and this article was the first ever to be censored by the UK Press Council. They considered it too damaging to race relations. March 2nd, 1981, was the twilight of the British Black Power movement. This protest went right to the heart of Britain's government and its wider public. As John Leroy said, "On this day, black struggles became centre stage in British politics." The message was clear. Systemic racism and state-sanctioned domestic terrorism would not be tolerated. The people would not rest until justice was served. No justice, no peace. Unfortunately, the New Cross massacre was not the last time that the British media, government, and police would fail to take black lives seriously. There is a long list of black deaths which still demand justice and reparation. But for the people who, on that historic day of action, stood up and said their lives matter in 1981, the fight was far from over.